I have a complaint with Hollywood. You see, werewolves and vampires are both exceptional movie monsters borrowed from folklore, but somehow werewolves have not been giving as much love and attention as vampires. And bit by bit, I wanna change that, which is why I thought of bringing this video to you. In this tremendous list of the 10 most unique werewolf movies of all time for horror fans like you and me. Here you have like feminist movies, coming of age movies, werewolf movies that are more emotional than horrifying, and movies where like soldiers are pitted against a pack. So without extending the intro any longer, let's sink our teeth into the list, shall we? Ginger Snaps, the year 2000. We're in Bailey Downs, a suburban setup where something has been tearing dogs apart. And meanwhile, we got Birgit and Ginger Fitzgerald, two sisters who are deeply fascinated with death. That's their thing. Dark humor, morbid curiosity, it works. So when they head out for a prank and run into an actual monstrous creature out there, shit gets real serious real soon. Ginger gets bitten, and as you can expect, the way her life spirals is disturbing. But it is also a very specific pattern. Now, this is also the part that makes the movie stand out, while remaining smart. So the transformation is not only physical. I mean, yes, her wounds heal fast, she becomes aggressive, grows hair, develops a tail, all of that is there. But at the same time, the film builds a connection between all these changes and her puberty. What we get is heavy menstruation, heightened impulses, a new sense of control and danger in her own body. It's all pretty loud, and that's the whole point. Anyway, as Ginger changes, her behavior starts affecting those around her. She begins dating Jason, but that relationship turns dangerous when she bites him during an intimate moment. Meanwhile, Birgit tries to hold things together, and this is where I think the emotional core really kicks in. She goes to Sam, a local drug dealer, and learns what Ginger is becoming. They attempt a cure using monk's hood extract, but amidst all this, you can clearly feel a tension building. Directed by John Fawcett, the film takes the werewolf idea and connects it directly to female, adolescence, and autonomy. That concept makes it different, and the performances from Catherine Isabelle and Emily Perkins do the rest of the trick. Despite all the darkness that the movie contains, it's funny at times. It's brutal when it needs to be, and it doesn't soften its themes. It depends on them and explores them in all their morbid glory. So yeah, this is not your standard werewolf film, and I think that's exactly why it sticks. Dog Soldiers, year 2002. Alright, so the premise of Dog Soldiers is simple. And I mean, very simple. But then it commits to itself so much that it ends up working way better than expected. You have got a squad of British soldiers dropped into the Scottish Highlands for what should be a routine training exercise. But the moment they stumble across the remains of the SAS team they were meant to face, you know this is not training anymore. Captain Ryan is the only survivor, and even he isn't giving them any clear answers. Meanwhile, night falls, and that's when the movie goes into survival mode. The squad takes shelter in a secluded house, but that is a bad call because they are not alone out there. The right thing to do would have been just to get the hell out of there and back to base, but it's late now, and the house gets surrounded by a pack of werewolves. Anyway, from this point, the film sticks to its core idea of soldiers versus werewolves. And yeah, I totally respect how direct that is and how it has like zero overcomplication or detours. You've got 6 soldiers, limited ammunition, and something outside that does not stop. Meanwhile, Cooper and Megan, a zoologist they came across, start piecing things together, and that's when they find themselves in the middle of yet another problem. Sergeant Wells is infected, so now the danger is both outside and inside. Now, if you're wondering what makes this film different, well, it's the film's simplicity and the fact that it's not only horror, it's also action. That military setup gives it a rhythm that feels like a siege. Meanwhile, there's another thing that I found interesting. Captain Ryan's intentions do not stay clean. There's a government angle here, something hidden behind the mission, and that adds tension within the group. And once the action starts, it doesn't stop, kinda giving you an alien-like feel, albeit with werewolves and not xenomorphs. Furthermore, the film depends heavily on practical effects, and you can tell. The werewolves, their weight, movement, and physicality, everything feels more authentic than several big-budget films. Casting dancers inside the suits was a smart call, because their motion feels controlled and fluid. Written and directed by Neil Marshall, you should definitely watch it if you're a horror fan, or an action fan for that matter. The Company of Wolves in 1984. Even on a list of the most unique werewolf movies, The Company of Wolves is not your standard werewolf story, and I think it's better if we get that clear up front. This is not about a straight plot where point A leads to point B. Instead, the film works like a layered dream, and everything inside feels symbolic, kinda like a dark fairy tale that keeps shifting under your feet, like some sort of cinematic tectonic plates. We follow Rosaline, a young girl who dreams of a forest world with her family, and that dream gets fractured after her sister is killed by wolves. Next, she turns to her grandmother, and things begin to feel uneasy. Instead of comforting young Rosaline, her grandmother warns her, specifically about men, about wolves, and about what hides beneath appearances. Now, instead of moving in a straight line, the story branches into multiple tales, almost like stories within stories. And I'll be honest, at first you might wonder where this is going, but even that haphazard structure has an order, trust you me. Now, werewolves here are not only creatures in the woods, they represent something else. Desire, danger, transformation, basically everything that's related to growing up. Anyway, Rosaline's journey brings her face to face with these ideas in a direct way. She meets a boy, enters the forest, and witnesses how a wolf can die and reveal a human underneath. Later on her way to her grandmother's house, she meets a huntsman, and this part follows the familiar fairy tale setup, but then there's dark things and more lessons awaiting Rosaline. As it happens, the huntsman kills her grandmother, reveals his true nature, and Rosaline fights back, injuring him with his own weapon. Now, instead of fear, she shows compassion. She tends to him, forms a connection, and when the villagers arrive expecting a monster, the transformation doesn't really go where you want or expect it to go. Rosaline herself becomes part of that world, which makes even the ending of the movie unique. Directed by Neil Jordan, it delves fully into a surreal gothic style with related imagery. It moves between beauty and something far more dangerous, deadly, and dark at moment's notice. Furthermore, Angela Carter's influence is what guides the entire narrative. You will also find some Red Riding Hood without looking too hard, because they've been sprinkled all over the film, especially because they're used to explore female adolescence, sexuality, and fear of male desire. So when I look at the Company of Wolves from a macro level, I see a metaphor-driven story. Were 2013. As a movie, Were keeps shifting its identity the entire time, and I believe that's what brought Were into this list. And the genre blending, and I mean that literally, because this isn't framed like a horror film at the beginning. It opens like a legal case. Yeah, so we're in the French countryside and there's this brutal attack on an American family. Only Claire Porter survives, and her account leads Captain Klaus Pistor to arrest a local man, Talon Gwynnick. Interestingly enough, instead of jumping straight into the monster on the loose trope, the film hands us Catherine Moore, a defense attorney who takes Talon's case. So now we're watching an investigation from the defense side. Anyway, Moore builds her team with Eric Sarin and Dr. Gavin Fleming, and together they start digging. The early explanation tries to point toward a rare genetic condition, thanks to Talon's family history. So for a while, the film almost convinces you that this might stay grounded in reality. But no, that doesn't hold for long. Gavin gets bitten during an encounter with Talon, and things start slipping out of control. Now the structure shifts again. Talon escapes custody, and suddenly the film moves from being a courtroom drama or crime procedural to a full manhunt. Furthermore, footage surfaces of Talon transforming, and at that point there's no ambiguity left, cause this is where the movie definitely becomes a werewolf movie. But if you think about it, you've got various formats. There are mockumentary elements, found footage, courtroom drama, and then straight up creature action. And this genre blending is the hook. It doesn't stay in one lane, and the tonal changes mirror what's happening to Talon himself. Meanwhile, there are smaller threads that keep the tension active. Gavin's condition worsens after the bite, and Pistor holds back information, which adds this whole other layer to an already messed up situation. So even when the film goes bigger, it keeps those personal stakes intact. Now, if I'm being honest, the heavy use of handheld camera work can get distracting at times. It doesn't always help what's already engaging, but once the film picks up pace midway, it becomes far more gripping. The use of a real condition like porphyria adds an extra angle, even if it doesn't fully match traditional werewolf lore. By the end, the film commits to its idea, and yeah, for me, Were works because it refuses to stay predictable. The Wolf of Snow Hollow, year 2020. The Wolf of Snow Hollow is definitely gonna make you wonder if this is actually about a werewolf, or if that's just a cover story. And the more it goes on, the clearer the answer gets. And it's not as straightforward as you might think. We're in a small mountain town called Snow Hollow, and things start with a brutal incident with a couple on vacation. Brian ends up dead, and the evidence at the scene of the crime points towards something animalistic. There's even a paw print left behind. We meet Deputy Sheriff John Marshall, and this guy is not fit to be a cop, to put it mildly. He struggles with anger, alcohol, and pressure from all sides. Anyway, another victim turns up, a snowboarding instructor, and again the evidence points to a wolf attack. Fur at the scene, similar injuries, same pattern. So naturally the town starts buying into the werewolf idea. Curfews come into play, fear spreads, and John tries to hold things together while barely holding himself together. As you can see, the core concept of the movie is that it's not a mystery or a horror setup, it blends thriller, comedy, and the personal struggles of Marshall. The monster angle runs parallel to John's own downward spiral. His alcohol issues, his temper, his constant frustration with investigation, all of that mirrors the idea of losing control when you become a werewolf. Meanwhile, the investigation keeps pushing him further. He looks into local records, studies werewolf lore, deals with suspects, and faces resistance from his own department. At one point, he even gets banned from his support group, which only means that things have slipped for him. So the case and his personal life start feeding into each other. Additionally, the movie moves between tension and dry humor, sometimes in the same scene, and this balance works most of the time, even if it feels uneven in parts, especially towards the end. Jim Cummings, who directed and starred in the film, carried a lot of this through his performance by bringing vulnerability and frustration in equal measure, which makes John feel real and relatable, even when situation gets strange. When Animals Dream, year 2014. When Animals Dream begins slowly, almost too slow for its own good. But then you see why the director Jonas Alexander Arnby chose to do that. The fact that this movie isn't loud horror actually helps the movie in building its blocks through discomfort. And I think that's what makes it worthy of this list. We're in a remote Danish fishing village, and we follow Marie, a 16-year-old who keeps to herself. Her home life is not what most kids would want. Mother is catatonic and confined to a wheelchair, and her father has this constant tension, like he knows more than he says. Now shit gets real when Marie notices changes in her own body. A rash appears, and then hair starts growing, and you can tell she has no idea what's happening to her. Anyway, at the same time, she starts working at a fish processing plant, which should have been a normal step forward, but instead it turns into another pressure point. Her co-workers treat her poorly, and that adds to everything already building inside her. Meanwhile, the film slowly reveals that her family is hiding something, and her mother's condition might not be what it seems at first glance. Now, here's what it sets itself apart, and this comes straight from the movie's main theme or trope. This is not about lunar cycles or sudden bursts tied to the full moon. The transformation is connected to emotion, fear, anger, isolation. All of that feeds into what Marie is becoming. You know how they say anger is second madness? Well, in Marie's case, extreme emotions are lycanthropy, but the film doesn't rely on spectacle. Changes in her body are there, but they stay restrained. The focus stays on Marie, on how she processes everything around her, and how she slowly stops suppressing what's happening. Directed by Jonas Alexander Arnby, the film has a coming-of-age angle with a darker edge. It's less about shock and more about acceptance. In other words, When Animals Dream doesn't push you with noise. Instead, it pulls you in and lets the transformation speak for itself. Howl, 2015. Much like Dog Soldiers, Howl is also simple, almost too simple, and focuses on themes like claustrophobia and group efforts. You've got a late-night commuter train, a handful of passengers, and one very bad problem. The train stops in the middle of nowhere, and whatever is outside does not want to let them leave. We follow Joe, the train guard, and I like this angle because he's not a typical hero. He's underappreciated, recently passed over for a promotion, and clearly not someone who can be expected to lead anything, let alone a party that fights werewolves. But then once the need arises, he doesn't get a choice. He must and has to step up. Anyway, once the train halts, you see the tension rising faster than mercury levels on the sun. Passengers start to notice something is wrong, and they soon realize that werewolves have surrounded the train. So the setting is tight. There is no easy escape, and every decision matters because the group is trapped in a narrow space with limited options. Meanwhile, the passengers themselves are another side of the story. You've got a mix of personalities. The loud one, the grumpy one, the quiet ones, and all of them react differently under pressure, and they all want things done their way, which is a dynamic that drives a lot of retention. Sometimes it works, sometimes it feels a bit broad, but it keeps things moving. Now, if you're asking what makes this unique, I'd point to the setting first. A stranded train, one that's not on a platform, creates a natural sense of isolation, and the film builds on that. Furthermore, the creature design adds something fresh. The werewolves feel distinct enough to hold attention, and the gore effects deliver where they need to, but it's not flawless. When the film slows down to focus on character moments, it can lose some momentum. The personalities feel a bit familiar, and that does affect the tension at times. Still, once the attacks pick up again, it finds its rhythm. Directed by Paul Hyatt, the film keeps things grounded within its limits. It doesn't try to reinvent the genre, and that should, in fact, be respected. The greatest strength of the movie is that it knows what it is, and I'd go as far as to say that it is the best breed werewolf movie since Dog Soldiers.
What is that?
Wolfwalkers 2020. In this animated movie, we're in Kilkenny, Ireland, around 1650, where the town lives under strict control from the Lord Protector, and the forest outside are treated like a threat, something that needs to be demolished, desecrated, annihilated, whatever you want to call it. It turns out wolves are the enemy, and Bill Goodfellow's job is to hunt them down. His daughter Robin wants in on that world, but of course she's told to stay inside. Anyway, Robin doesn't listen. She sneaks out, follows her father, and that's what sets everything in motion. In the woods, she tries to help, ends up knocking out her own falcon, Merlin, by mistake, and gets sent back into town as punishment. But hey, the forest isn't done with her. She returns, finds Merlin alive, and meets Maeve, who is not what she seems. A wolf that can turn into a girl, a Wolfwalker. Now that Maeve heals her, Robin becomes one too. When she sleeps, her spirit takes wolf form, and suddenly she's part of the very thing the town fears. Meanwhile, she learns that Maeve's mother, Moll, is trapped in wolf form under the Lord Protector's control. So now the story becomes a conflict from both sides. Robin stands between the town and the forest, between her father and Mev, and when Lord Protector decides to destroy the wolves and burn the forest, it all comes to a head. Now, what makes this film such a beauty that it is the animation itself. It blends hand-drawn 2D with subtle depth, and those wolf vision sequences feel unique to this world. The style borrows heavily from Irish folklore and medieval art, with flat perspectives and pattern environments somehow still carry emotion. But it's not only about how it looks. The film builds strong emotional arcs, especially between Robin, her father, and Maeve. Directed by Irish animator Tom Moore and Ross Stewart, it keeps things simple in structure but rich in feeling. Wolf Guy, 1975. Wolf Guy in Tokyo at night. A man in a white suit runs through the streets, terrified, shouting about something chasing him. He calls it a tiger, and before you can process that, reporter Akira Inugami tries to calm him down, follows him into an alley, and the man gets torn apart by something you cannot see. So we know from the very beginning that this movie is part mystery, part crime story, and then something else on top of it all. Anyway, Inugami, nicknamed Wolf, starts digging, and with his partner Arai, he traces his back to Miki Ogata. Now, her story is where things take a turn. She was once engaged to the son of a powerful politician, and that connection leads to her being kidnapped, assaulted by Yakuza, and left with a disease that destroys her life. Engagement gone, future gone, and now she survives through a strip club and addiction. That anger, that pain, it manifests as this invisible tiger that hunts down the people who ruined her. Now, here's where I had to pause pause, because the film doesn't frame her as a simple villain. Inugami gets involved and wants to help her, but not for simple reasons. Over time, you realize he has his own past, and that reveals about his heritage propels the entire story further into the strange and the mystical. Meanwhile, the film keeps layering things. There's a flashback early on, a village wiped out, one child left alive. The thread connects later, and quite well, if I may add. But hey, this is still a Sonny Chiba film, so you know what comes with that. The action is quite out there and brutal. His fights have a thing about them, and the violence doesn't hold back, whether it's the creature attacks or the confrontations with the gang. Now, about the werewolf angle. It's there, but not in a very obvious sense. It becomes more relevant towards the end, but the film doesn't focus on it as much as the title suggests. Brotherhood of the Wolf, 2001. This movie takes you to 1764 France, in the province of Gévaudan, where a mysterious beast has been killing people. The king sends in Gregory de Fronsac, a royal naturalist, along with his Iroquois companion Mani. Now at first, this feels like a classic investigation. Track the creature, study the attacks, find a pattern. But very quickly, things don't line up. Anyway, Fronsac finds clues that suggest something unnatural. A steel fang at a crime scene, a witness who claims the beast had a human master. Now, this expands the story from hunt the animal to something else is going on here. Meanwhile, Fronsac gets involved with Marianne, daughter of a local count, while also maintaining a connection with Sylvia, an Italian prostitute who knows more than she lets on. Then there's politics, there's hidden agendas, and there's this constant sense that the beast is part of a larger plan. Back in Paris, Fronsac uncovers the truth, and it reframes everything we've seen so far. So as you can see, this is not just mystery, it's much more, so much more. It moves between romance, action, and even martial arts, especially through Mani, who brings a completely different energy into the story. That mix could feel messy, but here it flows in a way that's deliberate. And the reason I put this up on this list is firstly its setting in the story. More importantly, the movie is not really a straight werewolf film, even though it may seem super close to that idea. It's a mix of historical drama, creature story, and political intrigue, all working together. Visually, it's strong, and the production feels detailed without losing focus. I won't spoil it for you, but the beast itself, when revealed, connects to the broader themes of manipulation and control rather than being a regular creature threat. So yeah, that was all in this one, guys. If you think I missed something or one of the movies must be replaced with something else, you know where to let me know. If you liked the video, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button. Those two small clicks from you will help us tremendously in bringing you more of these lore lockdowns. Stay safe and have a good one.